In today's video, we'll be exploring the top 10 questions people ask about Islam. There are some pretty interesting questions, so let's get right into them and be sure to stick around for all of them. Coming in at number 10, we have the question, do Muslims worship Muhammad? Peace be upon him. No, Muslims absolutely do not worship Muhammad or any other prophets. For Muslims, there is no entity worthy of worship but Allah. Allah has no partners, no progeny, and no gender. Muslims believe that Allah's message was given to numerous prophets, including Noah, Abraham, Moses, Elijah, and Jesus, and other prophets common to Christianity and Judaism, as well as Muhammad. Muslims love Muhammad greatly as he is the last prophet who had the most success instituting Allah's word in his lifetime. Our next question is, do Muslims believe in Jesus? Peace be upon him. Muslims think very highly of the prophet Jesus. The Quran teaches that Jesus was born of a miraculous birth without a father to the Virgin Mary. Jesus was given many miracles. These include speaking soon after his birth in defense of his mother's piety, healing the blind and the sick, reviving the dead, making a bird out of clay, and most importantly, the delivery of the message he was carrying. These miracles were given to him by Allah to establish him as a prophet. Our next question is quite interesting. It is, what is the purpose of worship in Islam? Well, the Quran asserts that worshiping God is the primary reason for human existence. The purpose of worship in Islam is to be God conscious. Thus, the worship, whether it is prayer, fasting, or charity, is a means to connect with and please God. When one becomes conscious of God in thought and in action, he or she is in a better position to receive his bounties both in this world and the hereafter. Ibadah is the Arabic word for worship. This refers to voluntary submission to the Creator and obedience to his preferred way. Ibn Taymiyyah, a classical scholar of Islam, described worship as a comprehensive term that encompasses all that Allah loves of words and deeds, whether inward or outward. Coming up at number 7, we have the question, do Muslims believe in the hereafter? Well, God is just and manifests his justice through accountability. Islam teaches that there is life after death known as akhirah. Those who do good will be rewarded, and those who do wrong will be punished accordingly. Thus, he created heaven and hell, and there are admission criteria for both. Muslims believe that the present life is a temporary one. It is a test, and those who pass the test will be given a life of permanent pleasure in Jannah or paradise. Those who have performed more bad deeds than good deeds will enter Jahannam or hell. This is a place of physical and spiritual suffering. Our next question is quite a common one. Do Muslims have a dress code? The way in which Muslims dress is really driven out of modesty and a desire to not draw individual attention in any way. Muslims generally do not resent the expectations placed on their dress, most regard it as a proud statement of their faith. There are certain guidelines, both for men and women, that their dress should neither be too thin, nor too tight, or too revealing of the body's forms. Men must at least cover from the knee to the navel. For women, the Prophet Muhammad instructed that they should cover their bodies except for their face and hands. The veil is not essential, but it is willfully worn as a personal choice of modesty for many. Coming in at the halfway point, we have our question, what are the dietary prohibitions in Islam? Muslims are instructed in the Quran not to eat pork or pork products. They are also prohibited from consuming the meat of animals who died before being properly slaughtered, or the carnivorous animals, as they eat dead animals. They are also prohibited from drinking or consuming blood or intoxicants. Up at number 4, we have an interesting question. Was Islam spread forcefully by the sword? Now, according to the Quran, there is no compulsion in religion. Thus, no one can be forced to become a Muslim. Historically, while it is true that in many places where Muslim armies went to liberate people or their land, they did carry a sword, but this was simply because it was the weapon used at the time. However, Islam did not spread forcefully. In many places where there are Muslims now, like Indonesia, China, and many parts of Africa, there are actually no records of any Muslim armies going there, and yet there are many followers. Furthermore, in India, where Muslims ruled for 700 years, they are still a minority. And in the US, Islam is the fastest growing religion and has 6 million followers without any use of violence or compulsion. Our next question is, does Islam promote polygamy? Well, polygamy in Islam is not promoted, but it is permissible. Historically, all the prophets except Jesus, who was not married, had more than one wife. For Muslim men, having more than one wife is permissible according to the Quran, not to satisfy lust, but for the welfare of the widows and orphans of war. In the pre-Islamic period, men used to have many wives. One person had 11 wives, and when he became Muslim, he asked the Prophet Muhammad, "What should I do with so many wives?" And the Prophet said, "Divorce all except 4. The Quran says you can marry 2 or 3 and up to 4 women if you can be equally just with each of them. Since it is very difficult to be equally just with all wives in practice, most Muslim men do not have more than one wife." This next one is a very important one. Does Islam oppress women? The easy answer is no. On the contrary, Islam elevated the status of women 1400 years ago by giving them the right to divorce, the right to have financial independence and support, and the right to be identified as dignified women through their modesty. In the Quran, women are equal to men in all acts of piety. In Islam, women keep their maiden names after marriage, they keep their earned money for themselves and can spend it as they wish, and have men accompany them in public for ensured safety. Prophet Muhammad told Muslim men, "The best among you is the one who is best to his family," and this especially includes their wives. And coming in all the way down at number 1, we have the question, how should Muslims treat Jews and Christians? Muslims are taught to treat them with respect and justice, and not to fight with them unless they initiate hostilities or ridicule their faith. Ultimately, Muslims hope that all will join them in worshiping one God and submit to his will. Now, what about Hindus, Baha'i, Buddhists, and members of other religions? Well, they should also be treated with love, respect, and understanding to make them recipients of invitations to Islam. According to Al-Mumtahana, Allah does not forbid you to deal justly and kindly with those who fought not against you on account of religion, nor drove you out of your homes. Verily, Allah loves those who deal with equity. Therefore, they should also be treated with justice and understanding, so as to incline their hearts towards the message of Islam.